African American students in higher education, a not so black and white issue. My name is Tracy Montgomery, and this is my digital story for multicultural and diversity in higher education administration. While most of us recognize pictures from desegregation during the civil rights movement, what many of us don't realize is that we're going to start seeing more of those pictures, as even in just September of 2016, Cal State has chosen to be labeled as having segregated housing. So we used to fight for desegregation, and now we are wanting segregation. So how did we go from having a society where African American students were forced into segregation, but now in just a matter of several decades, they are actually requesting segregation? What in the world has happened to even get us to this point? Let's consider the society with which college students are coming from. This is a picture of a scene from a famous movie in 2015 called Straight Outta Compton. It is a true story about a couple of famous rap artists. And this particular scene, it showed police brutality that was very much alive in California at the time. And even though it mentioned and showed police brutality as being a major problem during that time, it's almost as if the audience watched it and were entertained by it, but didn't make the connection that it's reality. And so African American students are sitting there watching their peers and watching others notice and recognize this movie and police brutality that exists in the movie, but not when it comes to real life. So African American students are watching their peers and each other watch this famous movie and recognize police brutality in a movie based on a true story, but when it comes to Alton Sterling, all of a sudden people are defensive. That it's not a black and white issue and that police brutality doesn't exist to the extent that it does. Or even Philander Cast, I mean, how devastating that they see these pictures on media TV, they see other African Americans getting shot, and it is publicized, and yet instead of sympathy, there's criticism. And this larger divide is happening, and this is what is going on in society while they're coming to campus for a safe place. As a result of this and many other incidents leading up to it, Black Lives Matters is formed and is a national movement to draw attention to the social injustices that still exist for African Americans, and to point out that the racial divide is still very much there in the United States and very much alive. But instead of getting sympathy or empathy, the reaction is more of a backlash, and the racial divide just seems to get wider. Instead of sympathy or empathy, the result is mockery, a mockery of their social injustice. As a matter of fact, they even take the very small bit of acknowledgement like Black History Month and then mock that, and no credit there. Then further, that make it worse, is the idea that all of this is anti-white, and that instead of just showing sympathy and standing up for social injustice for others, people are taking and getting defensive about it. One must recognize the reality in society that students are coming from in order to recognize the reality in higher education. This is a scene from a movie called Dear White People. Highly recommended. It shows all aspects of what the college experience is like for the African American students. And it is a satire, and it uses humor, though, to point out all the difficulties and complexities of being an African American college student in today's society. But beyond entertainment, let's look at what happened in higher education starting in the school year 2015-2016. This is a picture of a hunger strike from University of Missouri, and they were really the first one to kick off what happened to be a series of college campuses across the nation acknowledging the social injustice that exists in their institution, pretty much claiming that you say diversity, but what does that look like? Because a lot of students did not feel the support from the college that they were claiming in their mission statements. One of the other colleges to receive national attention was the University of Tennessee. This is Bridget, one of my former students, who is now attending Tennessee, and she was attending with a scholarship from their diversity program, which has now been cut as of March of last year. It was amazing the message that it sent, and it's been a very personal experience for many of the African American students and other minorities on campus, the message that University of Tennessee has sent. Here is an example of just one of the messages that Bridget has sent me in this journey that she is going through and experiencing on campus. In a text she sent in the middle of the night after President-elect Donald Trump was voted in, Bridget wrote, "Our campus climate is ugly tonight, and this is just via social media. Our majority students, specifically our white frat males, are unapologetically bold with their hate. They have been. Their actions are never addressed. This is the same school where barrels of cotton were placed at our Black Cultural Center." I believe there is hope, and I believe that it's in ways we can all take action, and specifically what I can do. It's time for action. Martin Luther King Jr. says the time is always right to do what is right. We can start by voting for policies and for people that will represent our beliefs and equality for all. I'm going to make sure that I let people teach me how to treat them, and that I can in turn teach other people how to properly address each other as human beings. I also need to make sure that I am aware of the microaggressions that exist and do a better job at educating myself and others about the many microaggressions. Additionally, we need to make sure that I send a message along with everybody else I work with that we will not tolerate hate of any kind on a campus. More specifically, I need to make sure that I keep constant dialogue with those around me, African American, other minorities, and my colleagues, and be transparent. I also strongly believe in being in the front lines. That if I am part of the majority, then I have the ability to send a message. I need to not be silent, but to be right up front on the battle lines with minorities, and in this case, African Americans. I need to be a physical presence, a visual, to show that I support, even if I might be the only white person, but hopefully I can use my personal skills and communication to bring people together, to bring maybe some white students that are not used to being exposed to all black or mostly all black events to show up and to be a present, to support high school students as they transition into those college students and being a part of a minority on campus, to work in my area of college athletics, to be a present with those who I've had relationships with in the past and keep them in the future, to continue my dialogue and my knowledge of what is going on. I will continue to live a life that shows equality and diversity even outside of my campus life and my campus career, and watch those proud moments to see people graduate that weren't expected to graduate. Additionally, I also want to make sure that I help support African American students, let them know that they need to be proud and educated. I want to show a student that they can go from one moment of holding my child to someday me holding theirs. Not only will I be an ally for African American students, but also for other white students who are in support of African American students and who sometimes may get ridiculed for it. I will continue to be a resource for people like Shaylee, who when she ended up getting engaged to a black man and having a child, her parents completely disowned her. She didn't know who to turn to, but she knew she could turn to me. She knew she'd have my support, and I was honored to be able to be the motherly presence in the room as she gave birth. And it is her baby that will grow up without grandparents and in a society that may judge him in this world torn of black and white, that my family and myself will be supportive every step of the way. In summary, it's best said by one of my role models, Nelson Mandela. He said, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." You see, it's not just a matter of when I'm on campus or in a particular office or in a certain setting that I act a particular way to show my support and love for African American students in their struggle or other minorities. It's not a matter of just then. It's a way of life. I need to be an example of showing heart and showing a mindset that can hopefully serve a purpose that will spread to others and show that I'm an advocate for equality of everyone.